There are certain smells that can transport you through time. The scent of wood smoke on a winter evening, the perfume of rain on dry earth, the aroma of bread baking in an oven that's been warming kitchens for generations. But there's one fragrance that holds within it the entire architecture of Christmas past. A scent so rich and complex that it carries the weight of centuries in every molecule. It's the smell of Christmas pudding. And if you've ever stood in a kitchen on a cold December evening while that dark, mysterious sphere emerged, steaming from its cloth, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know that this isn't just dessert. This is memory made edible. This is tradition you can taste. Picture a kitchen in 1850s America. Not the gleaming, efficient space we know today, but a room where firelight dances across worn wooden tables, where copper pots hang from hand-forged hooks, where the windows fog with steam, and the walls hold the accumulated warmth of 1,000 family meals. It's late November, and something extraordinary is about to happen. The mother of the house, her hands flour dusted and strong, is gathering her children around the table. But they're not here to eat. They're here to participate in a ritual that began long before they were born and will continue long after they're gone. They're here to make the Christmas pudding. She brings out a bowl, large and deep, passed down from her grandmother, who brought it across the Atlantic, wrapped in quilts and prayers. Into this bowl will go ingredients that have been accumulating for weeks. Suet from the butcher, saved and prepared with care. Breadcrumbs from every loaf baked since October, dried and stored in cloth sacks. Flour ground from wheat harvested in the golden days of late summer. Brown sugar that arrived by wagon from the general store, each crystal holding the sweetness of Caribbean sun. Eggs from the henhouse, their yolks bright as autumn marigolds. And then the fruits, raisins dark as midnight. Currants that catch the light like tiny jewels. Candied citrus peel that releases oils when you press it between your fingers. Almonds that crack with a sound like distant thunder. But this is more than a recipe. This is alchemy. Each ingredient must be measured, yes, but also blessed with intention. The mother tells her children, as her mother told her, that every person who stirs the pudding must make a wish. From east to west they must stir, the direction the wise men traveled, and as the spoon moves through that thick dark batter, each person sends their deepest hope into the mixture. The youngest child wishes for a new doll. The eldest wishes for the safe return of an uncle traveling west with the wagon trains. The mother wishes for health to carry her family through another winter. The father, standing in the doorway with wood for the fire, wishes for a good harvest come spring. These wishes fold into the batter like the spices, invisible but absolutely present, and they will mature along with the pudding in the months to come. Because here's what made Christmas pudding extraordinary. What made it different from anything else in the American culinary tradition. It was made on Christmas. It was made for Christmas. Specifically, it was made on Stirrup Sunday, the last Sunday before Advent, which fell in late November. The pudding would be mixed, wrapped in cloth, tied with string, and then boiled for hours until it became dense and dark and mysteriously transformed. Then it would be hung in the coolest part of the house, usually the cellar or pantry, and there it would wait, and wait, and wait. For 4 weeks or more, that pudding would hang like a strange, fragrant oracle, growing richer and more complex with every passing day. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine preparing something in November that you wouldn't taste until December 25th? In our world of instant gratification, of same-day delivery and microwave meals, the very concept seems almost absurd, but that's exactly what made it sacred. The pudding became a calendar, a way of marking time, a tangible reminder that the best things in life require patience. Children would ask about it. Is it ready yet? How much longer? And parents would smile and say, not yet, not yet. Christmas is coming, but we must wait. We must let time do its work. The British brought this tradition to American shores, carried it in their trunks, along with their Bibles and their memories of home. In the colonial era, in the small settlements that would become great cities, in the frontier cabins where wolves howled in the darkness beyond the firelight, families made Christmas pudding. They adapted it, of course. American ingenuity always adapts. When traditional ingredients were scarce, they improvised. Wild berries replaced imported currants. Maple sugar stood in for expensive brown sugar. Local nuts filled the gaps when almonds couldn't be found. But the essential character remained. The patience remained. The ritual remained. Think about what this meant in practical terms. A family in December of 1823, eating Christmas pudding was tasting November. They were consuming time itself, rendered delicious. Every bite connected them backward to that day when they'd gathered around the bowl, to the wishes they'd made, to the people who'd been present then and might not be present now. The pudding became a bridge across time, an edible link between who they'd been and who they'd become in those intervening weeks. There's a reason the Victorians called it plum pudding, even though it rarely contained actual plums. The word plum was Old English slang for raisins, for any dried fruit really, but it meant something more. It meant richness. It meant luxury. It meant that despite the cold pressing against the windows and the darkness falling early, despite the hardships that winter always brought, there would be abundance, there would be sweetness, there would be something to celebrate. In the homes of wealthy merchants and in the modest cabins of farmers alike, the Christmas pudding represented a defiance of winter's scarcity. It was proof that humans could take the harvest's bounty, preserve it, transform it, and create something that made the darkest season bright. The making of the pudding was never a solitary act. This is crucial to understand. In the America of the 1800s, before radio, before television, before the isolating glow of screens, families worked together out of necessity, yes, but also out of something deeper. Community wasn't a choice, it was survival, it was meaning, and the Christmas pudding, requiring hours of preparation and multiple hands to manage its creation, became a focal point for that communal spirit. Grandmothers taught granddaughters the proper way to chop the suet. Fathers instructed sons on how to crack nuts without crushing the meat inside. Siblings competed to see who could stir the longest, their arms aching, their wishes growing more fervent with each rotation of the spoon. And there were always stories. Oh, the stories that accompanied the making. The grandmother might tell of the first Christmas pudding she ever tasted, back in the old country, in a village whose name the children struggled to pronounce. She described the taste with such precision that mouths would water despite the raw ingredients, still scattered across the table. The father might speak of the year the pudding didn't set properly, how it remained stubbornly loose despite hours of boiling, and how they'd eaten it anyway, calling it Christmas soup, laughing until their sides hurt. The mother might grow quiet and mention, almost in passing, the year they'd made the pudding but her brother wasn't there to taste it, having fallen ill that autumn, and how they'd placed a small portion at his grave on Christmas morning, steam rising into the frozen air like a prayer made visible. These stories weren't interruptions to the work, they were the work. The pudding was being made, yes, but something else was being constructed simultaneously. Memory, identity, a sense of belonging to something larger than any individual life. The children absorbing these tales would carry them forward, would tell them to their own children decades later, would anchor their sense of who they were to these moments of flower and firelight and family voices weaving the past into the present. Now, here's something that might surprise you. The Christmas pudding wasn't always the dark, mysterious sphere we think of today. In its earliest incarnations, back in medieval England before it crossed the ocean, it was more of a porridge, a thick pottage made with meat, dried fruits, and wine. It was called frumenty, and it was served at the beginning of the Christmas meal, not at the end. But over centuries, it evolved. The meat gradually disappeared, replaced by suet, which provided richness without the savory heaviness. Sugar became more affordable, more abundant, and the pudding grew sweeter. Spices from the Far East, cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves, found their way into the mixture, each one a small miracle of global trade compressed into a brown crystal or a curled bark. By the time the pudding reached American shores, it had become something new entirely, something that somehow managed to be both ancient and innovative, traditional and adaptable, European and distinctly, unmistakably American in its expression. Because Americans always put their own stamp on things, they couldn't help it. The land itself demanded adaptation. A recipe that worked perfectly in England's damp climate might fail in the dry cold of a Massachusetts winter or the humid warmth of a Virginia December. The fruits available varied wildly by region. A family in the Appalachian Mountains might add wild persimmons to their pudding, while a family in coastal Carolina might incorporate pecans harvested from trees older than the nation itself. The whiskey or brandy that would be ceremonially poured over the pudding before serving might be imported. Cognac in a wealthy merchantess home, or locally distilled corn whiskey in a frontier settlement. Each variation told a story. Each adaptation was a small declaration of independence, a way of saying we honor where we came from, but we're making something new here, something that belongs to this place and this time. The preservation of the pudding was its own minor miracle. In an age before refrigeration, keeping food safe for weeks was a constant challenge. But the Christmas pudding's very composition made it almost indestructible. The high sugar content inhibited bacterial growth. The alcohol acted as a preservative. The dense texture kept air from penetrating to the interior. Wrapped tightly in cloth, sealed with tallow, hung in a cool, dark place, the pudding would not only survive but improve. The flavors would marry, would deepen, would develop nuances that weren't present on that first day of making. It was as if the pudding were alive, maturing like whiskey in a barrel, becoming more itself with every passing day. And there was magic in knowing it was there. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, when work was hard and weather was harsh, when animals needed tending, despite frozen water troughs and frostbitten fingers, when darkness fell at 4 in the afternoon and wouldn't lift until well past dawn, there was comfort in remembering that pudding hanging in the cellar, waiting, ripening, holding all those wishes mixed into its dark heart. Children might sneak down to look at it, to touch the cloth and feel the firm weight beneath, to inhale deeply and catch that complex aroma of spices and fruits and something else, something indefinable, something that smelled like Christmas itself. Christmas morning arrived differently in those days. There were no electric lights suddenly illuminating a tree at the flip of a switch, no television specials or playlist of carols streaming from speakers. Instead, there was the gradual awakening of the household in darkness, the lighting of candles and oil lamps, the stoking of fires that had been banked overnight. The cold was profound, absolute, the kind of cold that makes your breath visible even inside the house. But there was anticipation too, thick as that cold, warming you from within, because today, after all those weeks of waiting, the Christmas pudding would finally be served. But first, it had to be prepared for its moment of glory. The pudding would be carefully unwrapped from its cloth cocoon, revealing a surface that had darkened and firmed over the weeks of hanging. It would be placed in a fresh cloth, tied securely, and lowered into a pot of boiling water for several more hours of steaming. This wasn't just reheating, this was awakening. The heat would soften the pudding's interior, would release the volatile compounds in those spices, would create steam that carried fragrance through every room of the house. Neighbors passing by on their way to church would catch the scent and smile, knowing that in that home, Christmas was being properly observed, that in that kitchen, the old ways were being honored. The dinner itself was an epic affair, course after course, each dish representing hours or days of preparation. Roasted goose or turkey, potatoes in multiple forms, vegetables that had been carefully stored in root cellars since autumn, breads and rolls and preserves. The family would eat until they could barely move, until buttons strained and belts needed loosening, and then someone would say the words everyone had been waiting for. It's time for the pudding. And despite their fullness, despite the groaning protests of overfilled stomachs, every person at that table would suddenly find room, because this wasn't just dessert. This was the culmination. This was what everything had been building toward. The pudding would be brought from the kitchen in ceremony, sometimes by the eldest daughter, sometimes by the mother herself, sometimes in a procession of children, each carrying a piece of the service. The pudding would be placed on its special plate, a piece of heirloom china used only for this purpose. And then came the moment that made children gasp and adults remember why they'd fallen in love with Christmas in the first place. The flaming someone, usually the father, would warm a ladle of brandy or whiskey over a candle flame, then pour it over the pudding's dark surface. Then, with a long match or a flaming splinter from the fireplace, he would set it alight. Blue flames would dance across the pudding, flickering and weaving, casting moving shadows on the walls and reflecting in the wide eyes of watching children. For a few precious seconds, the room would be lit, not by lamps or fireplace, but by this burning offering, this edible miracle that seemed to capture some essential truth about Christmas itself, about light emerging from darkness, about warmth conquering cold, about something small and humble becoming suddenly, impossibly beautiful. The flames would die, leaving the pudding glazed and gleaming, and then the cutting would begin. Thick slices, dense and dark, studded with fruits and nuts, were served onto plates, sometimes with hard sauce, butter whipped with sugar and brandy until it became a sweet, boozy cloud, sometimes with custard, warm and yellow and silky, sometimes with both, because Christmas was not a day for restraint, not a day for moderation, not a day for worrying about having too much of a good thing. And that first bite, oh, that first bite, it was everything the waiting had promised, rich beyond description, sweet but not cloying, with depths of flavor that revealed themselves in layers. First the sugar and spice, then the fruit, then something darker and more complex. Something that tasted of time itself, of patience rewarded, of tradition honored. But hidden in some slices were treasures. This was the tradition that made children approach their portion with genuine excitement rather than polite obligation. Somewhere in that pudding, mixed in during the making, were small items: a coin for wealth, a thimble for thrift, a tiny wishbone for luck, a ring for romance. Finding one of these items in your slice was considered powerfully auspicious, a sign that the year ahead would favor you in that particular way. Children would eat slowly, carefully, alert for the clink of metal against tooth or the hard shape of something unexpected against tongue. Adults would do the same, perhaps pretending sophisticated disinterest, but secretly hoping for that small miracle, that tangible sign that their wish, made weeks ago while stirring the batter, had been heard by whatever force governs such things. And here's what strikes me most powerfully about this tradition, what reaches across the centuries and touches something deep in the chest. The Christmas pudding required a family to work together, to plan ahead, to exercise patience, to defer gratification, to maintain faith that their effort would be rewarded. It required them to gather multiple times, first for the making, then for the serving. It created anticipation, conversation, shared experience. It connected them to their past through inherited recipes and handed-down bowls and stories of puddings from years before. It connected them to their future through the wishes stirred into the batter, through the children learning the process, through the creation of memories that would be carried forward. The pudding wasn't just food. It was a technology for maintaining family bonds across time. It was a delivery system for love and hope and continuity. And it worked so well that families maintained the tradition for generations, through wars and depressions and migrations, through every disruption and difficulty that American history could throw at them. If you found yourself moved by this story, if something in you responded to this vision of patience and ritual and family gathered in firelight, there's a reason for that. It's because something in us still hungers for these experiences, still craves connection that goes deeper than a like or a share. Still yearns for traditions that require something of us, that ask us to slow down and work together, and wait for rewards that do not come instantly but are all the sweeter for their delay. The decline of the Christmas pudding tradition in America tells its own story, one that mirrors larger changes in how we live. By the early 20th century, as industrialization accelerated and cities swelled with workers, as the pace of life quickened and the old rhythms began to break apart, the Christmas pudding started its slow fade from the American table. It wasn't a sudden disappearance. These things never are. It was gradual, almost imperceptible. The way a photograph left in sunlight slowly loses its color until one day you realize it is nearly gone. Part of it was practical. The making of Christmas pudding required time, and time was increasingly something families didn't have. Women were entering the workforce in greater numbers. The old extended family structures, grandmothers and aunts, all living close enough to help with holiday preparations, were fragmenting as people moved for work, for opportunity, for the promise of something better somewhere else. The commercial food industry, growing more sophisticated every year, offered alternatives: cakes from bakeries, pies from stores, desserts that could be purchased on Christmas Eve and served on Christmas Day without any of the weeks of preparation that pudding required. And while these alternatives lacked the depth of meaning that the pudding carried, they also lacked its demands. They were easier. In an increasingly fast-paced world, easier often wins. But there was something else too, something harder to quantify but perhaps more significant. The Christmas pudding represented a particular relationship with time, one that was becoming increasingly foreign to American culture. It required you to think ahead, to plan for a future moment, to exercise patience in an age that was rapidly losing patience with patience itself, the very qualities that made it meaningful. Its slowness, its demand for advanced preparation, its insistence on waiting, became liabilities in a culture increasingly oriented toward immediate gratification. Why make something in November for December when you could make something in December for December? Why wait weeks for flavors to develop when you could have cake right now? The wishes stirred into the pudding, too, began to seem quaint, almost embarrassing in their earnestness. Sophistication was becoming prized over sincerity. Irony was replacing genuine emotion. The idea of a family gathering around a bowl, each person stirring and wishing, each person participating in a ritual that acknowledged hope and vulnerability and connection, started to feel uncomfortably earnest. Easier to just buy dessert and move on. Easier to skip the ceremony and avoid the emotions it might evoke. By the 1950s and 60s, the Christmas pudding had become almost exclusively a British tradition once again. Something Americans associated with Dickens and Victorian England rather than their own history. If it appeared at all in American homes, it was usually as a novelty, a curiosity, a recipe attempted once, and then abandoned because it didn't taste right, or took too long, or seemed too strange compared to the pumpkin pies and chocolate cakes that had become the new standards. The profound meaning it once carried, that sense of connection across time and between generations, had been largely forgotten. What remained was just the recipe, just the ingredients, just the mechanics stripped of their magic. And yet there were holdouts. There still are. Families who maintained the tradition despite everything, who continued to make their Christmas pudding on Stirrup Sunday, who still wrapped it in cloth and hung it to mature, who still brought it flaming to the table on Christmas Day. These families understood something important. They understood that traditions aren't just habits, they're anchors. They're ways of remembering who we are and where we came from. They're methods for passing down not just recipes but values, not just techniques but meaning. Every time they made that pudding, they were voting against the accelerating pace of modern life. They were insisting that some things still matter, that patience still has value, that waiting can be sacred. In recent years, something interesting has started happening. There's been a revival of interest in the old ways, in traditions that require effort and time. People are baking bread from scratch, fermenting vegetables, making things by hand that could be easily purchased. And some of them are rediscovering the Christmas pudding. They're finding old recipes in inherited cookbooks, instructions written in the careful handwriting of great-grandmothers long gone. They're researching the history, understanding for the first time why the tradition mattered, what it represented, what wisdom it held. And they're making the pudding again, bringing it back, refusing to let it disappear completely into the past. These modern pudding makers discover something their ancestors knew. The process changes you. The act of gathering ingredients over weeks, of planning ahead, of mixing with intention, of exercising patience while the pudding matures, of gathering family for both the making and the serving. These acts cultivate qualities that our current culture desperately needs: patience, planning, delayed gratification, intergenerational connection, the understanding that the best things often require time and effort and faith, that the process will be worth it even when immediate evidence is lacking. Making a Christmas pudding in the modern world is an act of resistance. It's a refusal to accept that everything must be quick and convenient. It's an insistence that some experiences are worth the effort they require. It's a way of telling time itself that you won't be hurried, that you're willing to wait, that you understand maturity and depth and richness can't be rushed. Every person who makes a Christmas pudding today is connecting not just to their own past, but to a larger human story about patience and community and the power of ritual to bind us together across the generations. Think about what we've lost in our rush toward convenience. Think about the conversations that happened while making that pudding, the stories told, the skills transferred from old hands to young ones. Think about the anticipation built over weeks, the way that hanging pudding became a physical reminder that good things were coming, that patience would be rewarded. Think about the ceremony of the flaming, the gathering of family, the slicing and serving, the hunting for hidden treasures, the way a simple dessert became a vehicle for expressing hope and love and continuity. We traded all of that for the ability to grab dessert from a store shelf on the way home from work. Was it worth it? Have we gained more than we've lost? Perhaps some of you watching this are feeling something unexpected. A longing, maybe, a sense that something has been missing from your celebrations, some depth or meaning that store-bought efficiency can't provide. If that's true, if this story has awakened something in you, then maybe this is the year you bring the pudding back. Maybe this is the year you start a new tradition, or rather, resurrect an old one. Let me tell you about a letter I once read, written in 1873 by a woman named Sarah to her daughter who had moved west to California with her new husband. The letter was discovered decades later, pressed between the pages of an old cookbook, and it speaks to something essential about what the Christmas pudding truly meant. Sarah wrote about making the pudding that year, about how different it felt without her daughter there to help stir. She wrote about crying into the batter, her tears mixing with the brandy and the spices, and how she'd whispered her daughter's name while stirring, sending her love and her wishes across the impossible distance of a continent. She wrote that when Christmas came and they ate the pudding, it would be a way of having her daughter present, of folding her into the celebration despite the miles between them. And she asked her daughter to make her own pudding that year, at the same time, and to think of home while stirring, so that in some mystical way they might be together, even while apart. This is what the pudding was, at its deepest level. It was a technology for connection, a way of binding people across distance and time. Every ingredient mixed in was a prayer. Every hour of patient waiting was an act of faith. Every slice served was a communion, in the truest sense of that word, a coming together, a sharing of something that nourished more than just the body. The immigrants who came to America in wave after wave from Ireland during the famine, from Germany and Scandinavia, seeking land and freedom from Italy and Poland and Russia and 100 other places, they brought their own versions of Christmas traditions, their own special foods, their own ways of marking the season. But many of them adopted the Christmas pudding too, or adapted it, or fused it with their own customs, because there was something universal in its message, something that transcended any particular culture or nationality. The message was simple but profound. Good things take time. Family matters. Patience is a virtue. Hope is worth holding on to. The darkness of winter will give way to spring, but while we wait, we can create our own warmth, our own light, our own reasons for joy. In the coal mining towns of Pennsylvania, in the lumber camps of the Pacific Northwest, in the railroad towns sprouting like mushrooms across the Great Plains, the Christmas pudding became a small bulwark against the harshness of American industrial life. Men who worked in dangerous conditions, who lived far from the families they were trying to support, who faced uncertainty and hardship as daily companions, would gather on Christmas and share a pudding someone had made, had been making for weeks, had infused with wishes and hope. And for a few hours, eating that rich, dark, impossibly complex dessert, they could remember that life was more than work and survival, that there was sweetness in the world, that they belonged to something larger than their individual struggles. There's a particular poignancy to the items hidden in the pudding, those small charms that carried such weight of meaning: the coin for prosperity, the button for bachelorhood, the ring for marriage, the thimble for industry and thrift. These weren't just playful additions. They were acknowledgments of life's uncertainties, of the future's unknowability. No one could control what they found in their slice. It was luck, or fate, or providence, depending on your beliefs. But the ritual of searching, of hoping, of accepting whatever you found with grace and good humor, taught important lessons. That life gives us what it gives us. That fortune is distributed unevenly and mysteriously. That we can't control outcomes, only our responses to them. That finding joy in uncertainty is a skill worth cultivating. Children who found the coin would shriek with delight, clutching it in sticky fingers, already planning impossible expenditures. Adults who found the thimble might laugh or groan, but they'd accept it, because that's what you did. You accepted what the pudding gave you. And in some strange way, this prepared people for life itself, which also distributes its gifts and challenges without consulting our preferences, which also requires us to find grace and gratitude regardless of what we receive. The Christmas pudding survived wars, though barely. During the First World War, with sugar rationed and sons fighting in foreign mud, families still tried to maintain the tradition. They adapted recipes to use less sugar, less of everything that was scarce, and the puddings came out darker, denser, less sweet, but somehow more meaningful because of the sacrifice they represented. The act of making the pudding became a statement of faith, that there would be a Christmas worth celebrating, that the boys would come home, that normal life would resume. And when armistice finally came, when the soldiers returned broken and changed, the Christmas pudding was there waiting, a link to the world before, a promise that some things endured. The Great Depression tested the tradition differently. With money scarce and ingredients expensive, many families had to choose between maintaining traditions and feeding themselves adequately throughout the year. Some abandoned the pudding, others adapted it, so radically it barely resembled the original, using whatever fruits and nuts they could afford or forage, substituting ingredients, making do. But they still made it, still maintained the ritual even when the result was pale echo of the real thing. Because the ritual itself mattered, the gathering mattered, the connection mattered, the refusal to let hardship steal everything, to let poverty take not just their comfort, but also their culture, their identity, their sense of continuity with better times that might come again. Those Depression-era puddings, made with whatever people could scrape together, might have been the most meaningful of all, because they represented pure defiance, pure stubborn insistence that human beings are more than their circumstances, that spirit survives when everything else is stripped away, that a family gathered around a table sharing whatever they have is still a family, still valuable, still engaged in something sacred, regardless of what the world thinks. And the tradition did survive, kept alive by those who understood its value, who refused to let it die completely. It survived in scattered households, in immigrant communities, maintaining old country customs, in families where grandmothers ruled the kitchen, and insisted that some things would not change no matter what the modern world demanded. These custodians of tradition, mostly women if we're being honest, kept the knowledge alive. They taught anyone willing to learn. They wrote down recipes in careful handwriting. They told the stories. They made sure the next generation knew where this came from and why it mattered. If you're still watching, if you've stayed with this story through all its twists and depths, then you're exactly the kind of person who understands why these things matter. You're someone who recognizes that fast isn't always better, that convenient isn't always preferable, that some experiences are worth the effort they require. You're someone who might just be ready to become one of those custodians yourself, to pick up a tradition and carry it forward into whatever future we're making. Here's what I want you to imagine. It's late November, just as the year begins its descent into winter's darkness. You're in your kitchen, not rushing, not distracted by screens or notifications, but fully present. On your counter are bowls filled with ingredients that you've gathered over days or weeks, dried fruits that catch the light, nuts waiting to be chopped, spices that release their fragrance when you open the containers, flour and sugar and eggs, and all the ordinary materials that, when combined with intention and time, become extraordinary. You're not alone. Maybe your children are there, or your partner, or friends who've become family, or actual family who've traveled to be present for this moment. Everyone will take a turn stirring, from east to west, the direction of hope and new beginnings. And as each person stirs, they'll make a wish, not casually, not as a joke or a game, but seriously, genuinely, speaking into that mixture their deepest hopes for the year ahead. What would you wish for? What does your soul long for that you rarely acknowledge, even to yourself? What transformation are you hoping time will bring? The pudding will be made, wrapped, hung, and for the next 4 weeks or more, it will be there, waiting, maturing, growing richer and more complex. And every time you think of it, every time you catch a hint of its fragrance from the cellar or pantry, you'll be reminded that good things take time, reminded that patience is its own form of faith, reminded that you're part of something larger than your individual life, a chain of tradition that stretches back through generations, and will stretch forward through generations, yet unborn if you do your part to maintain it. Christmas will come, as Christmas always does, with whatever joy or sorrow the year has brought you. You'll gather your people around your table. You'll share food and stories and presents, and then you'll bring out the pudding. You'll warm the brandy and pour it over that dark, mysterious sphere. You'll strike the match and watch blue flames dance across its surface. And in that moment, something ancient and eternal will be present in your modern life. Something that connects you to every family that's ever done this, to every person who's ever believed that light emerges from darkness. That sweetness can be preserved through hard times. That hope is worth holding on to, even when evidence suggests otherwise. You'll slice the pudding and serve it. And yes, it will taste extraordinary, rich and complex, and unlike anything else. But the taste will be the least of it, really. What will matter more is the moment, the gathering, the ritual, the sense of having done something meaningful, something that required effort and patience and faith. The sense of having participated in the great human project of creating meaning in a world that doesn't automatically provide it, of forging connection in an age of isolation, of insisting that some things still matter even when the culture says nothing matters much at all. And maybe, just maybe, someone at your table will ask about it. Where did this come from? Why do we do it this way? And you'll tell them. Tell them about Stew-Up Sunday in Victorian England, and American immigrants and Depression-era adaptations, and all the families across all the years who made this same pudding, who stirred in their same hopes, who waited with the same patient faith. You'll tell them about the year that took to make it, not in actual labor but in anticipated time, in preparation and patience, and trust in a process you couldn't fully control. And in telling them, you'll be doing what humans have always done around fires and tables. You'll be passing something forward. You'll be maintaining the chain. The world moves fast now, faster than it's ever moved. Information bombards us constantly. Entertainment is infinite. Distraction is the default state. Everything is designed to capture our attention for a moment and then release it to the next thing, the next stimulation, the next shallow engagement. In such a world, the Christmas pudding is revolutionary, not despite its old-fashioned nature, but because of it. It asks you to slow down, to plan ahead, to work with your hands, to exercise patience, to gather with others, to participate in ritual, to connect with your past and your future simultaneously, to create meaning deliberately, rather than hoping it will somehow emerge from consumption and convenience. You don't have to make a Christmas pudding. Nobody's requiring it of you. You can continue having perfectly nice holidays with store-bought desserts and convenient shortcuts and efficiency prioritized over experience. Many people do, and they're not wrong to do so. Different families need different things. Different souls are fed by different practices. But if this story has touched something in you, if you've felt a stirring of longing for depth and meaning and connection that seems increasingly rare, then maybe the pudding is calling to you. Maybe it's offering you a way back to something you didn't even know you'd lost. The recipes still exist. They're not hard to find. The ingredients are available, though some require seeking out. The technique can be learned. You don't need special equipment or professional skills. You just need willingness. Willingness to try. Willingness to wait. Willingness to believe that the effort would be worth it, even though you can't know for certain until Christmas morning arrives and you taste what your VA created. And here's the beautiful secret. Even if it doesn't turn out perfectly, even if it's too dense or not sweet enough or the texture isn't quite right, it will still mean more than any purchased alternative, because you made it, because you invested time and attention and hope into its creation, because you participated in a tradition that connects you to millions of people across centuries, because you refused to let convenience erase ritual, to let efficiency eliminate meaning, to let the modern world's relentless pace steal your capacity for patience and depth. This is what the Christmas pudding has always been about. Not the ingredients, though they matter, not the technique, though it has its importance, but the choice to do something the slow way because the slow way has value, the choice to invest time because time invested transforms both the investment and the investor, the choice to maintain traditions because traditions are how we remember who we are and how we show future generations who they might become. Every tradition was new once. Every ritual had a first time. Someone had to decide that this thing, this practice, this gathering and mixing and waiting and serving was worth doing, worth preserving, worth passing forward. And then other people had to agree, had to take up the practice, had to make it their own while honoring its origins. That's how traditions survive, not through institutional mandate or cultural momentum, but through individual choices repeated over time, by people who understand that what they're preserving is more valuable than the effort it costs them. If you've made it to the end of this story, and I hope you have, because these final words matter most, then you're someone who values depth over speed, meaning over convenience, connection over isolation. You're someone who might just be ready to take up this tradition, or to explore your own family's forgotten rituals, or to create something new that future generations will look back on as their anchor, their connection to you and to the values you held dear. The Christmas pudding took a year to make, not because the process was complex, but because the waiting was essential. Time was the most important ingredient. Patience was the secret spice. And the lesson, the deep lesson that sustained families through wars and depressions and migrations and every hardship that American history could devise, was this: some things are worth waiting for. Some experiences require time and effort and faith. Some traditions demand something of us, and in that demanding, they give us far more than they take. This was another episode of the series Voices from the Past, produced by Ancient Memories of America, the America we remember. Stories like this one, traditions like the Christmas pudding, memories that matter. These are what we preserve here. These are what we refuse to let disappear completely into the past, because the past isn't just behind us. It lives in every choice we make about what to honor, what to maintain, what to pass forward. See you in the next episode. Until then, may your own traditions, whatever they are, bring you the depth and connection and meaning that every human soul requires, especially in this season when darkness falls early and we must create our own light to see by.